All right, guys, welcome back to Tar Heel 247.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones, and we're here for another edition of our UNC basketball look-ahead series. We're going to be focusing on James Brown in this one to wrap up James Brown week on our website. AJ, real quickly, just remind people what you're doing in terms of rolling out these specific player-themed weeks and kind of some of the content you're doing around it before we dive into talking a little JB in this one.
Each week we dedicate to a different basketball player. We started doing this about a month ago, close to a month ago, and we will do it until we go through all 13 scholarship players on the roster. What's really interesting is I wasn't sure what kind of basketball access we would get prior to the start of the season, and I thought, well, we have stuff that we've accumulated previously that I can put together for a feature story on Monday. We get a by the numbers, that player by the numbers on Tuesday. There were 6 best games from last year and what they mean Wednesday, a David Sisk film review Thursday, and then you and I come back with a podcast on Friday. But we're actually going to get players moving forward. So we're going to have not just a basketball piece during the Players Week, Monday through Friday. We're going to have other basketball content as well. So we're going to have a ton of basketball content, moving into the season, which starts in 2 months, by the way. So this is James Brown week. And it's interesting. I had a story written that I wrote a while ago to run this week, but Grant Hughes, who was part of Tar Heel 24/7, he's on the national desk and does a lot of national stuff, but also a part of us, wrote a phenomenal piece. He had an exclusive interview with James last week. And it's great because I didn't have that stuff in my story. So I'm like, we junked mine and we used Grant's. And it was a 2-parter. One was about Luka and some of the other guys, which is not part of the series. His main feature story that we ran Tuesday, and we didn't do it Monday, obviously, because of the football game, that's part of the series, and it's phenomenal. It's about gaining 25 pounds, what he ate, about his attitude, about conversations with Sean May and Hubert Davis and all that. So next week is going to be Jaden Young, the Virginia Tech transfer. So we have a different play. Next week in interviews, we get Kyan Evans and Henry Vesar. We have now learned that it's Vesar. Arizona was calling him Vesar. And Steve Kirshner, the UNC media relations head, told us the other day that Henry told him it's Vesar, that after a while he just gave up with Arizona, pronouncing it the wrong way and just rolled with it. So it's Vesar.
Which is hilarious, by the way.
It is hilarious. It's great stuff. So we get the 2 of them next Thursday, which is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to it. But it'll be Jaden Young week next week, and each week we'll have a different player. We've already done Henry Vesar. We've done Kyan Evans, James Brown. Who else did we do?
We did Jonathan Powell.
Jonathan Powell, yeah. By the way, Hubert said, I asked Hubert about Jonathan Powell being an offensive rebounder because he kind of looks like he's got a lot of that in his bag, and more of it could be put in his bag. And Hubert said, I think he could be a phenomenal offensive rebounder. So he pushed Leaky hard that way, and Leaky got better at it too. So I think there's some similarities there.
Yeah, well,
I've got about somebody else. This is about James Brown.
Yeah, it's about James Brown. James Courtney Brown. We were actually talking about that before it came on. We're like, James Brown. Everybody knows who James Brown is. You might want to throw the middle name in there.
Should he? This is a great question. Should he be James? Should he go J.C. Brown? Would it sound better? I told Jacob, people would think he's more athletic if he goes by J.C. Brown.
Yeah, probably so.
He vouches you that he is. James Brown, everyone's going to make, he feels good.
Yeah, most people, if you Google, Jonathan Powell, he's going to pop up. If you Google James Brown from UNC is not popping up anywhere. You got to specify.
Okay, so I put up last night before I went to bed, I put in for him, we're doing 5 best games for obvious reasons, not 6. And I do the find tags. So it tags all the players and the relevant schools, that kind of thing. There's no tag for James Brown. I tried to individually tag it. Nothing came up. So we got to actually get him in the system, obviously. But it's kind of understandable that James Brown, come on.
Yeah, come on, guys. It's not his name. Yeah. Again, it's there are certain people out there like James Brown being an instance where it's unfortunately, he could be one of the greatest NBA players of all time, but the other James Brown's going to pop up before him. You know what I mean? So it's unfortunate. Nothing to do about it. Yeah.
Can you imagine if there's some quarterback at Ole Miss named Elvis Presley?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, again, great name, but No one's going to be able to find you. You are not the most famous person for that.
It's funny because I don't know how often I've had somebody in my life say, "Oh, like the baseball player." Well, he's got a U in his name. I have an E.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, for the Braves. Yeah.
I tell him, I said the lone similarity is we both played center field.
I forgot. Yeah, what is it? Andruw? Is that how you spell it? Yeah. So it's different.
We both played center field.
But you go by AJ. I don't call you Andrew.
Well, I go by AJ. It's really weird. I go by AJ in the media. Nobody back home calls me AJ.
What do they call you back home?
They call me Bones back home.
Oh, okay. It's a nickname.
Bones. It's a nickname. Everybody had nicknames. The only guy
a lot of your friends when you tell stories.
Rick was the only one that didn't have a nickname because he's just Rick.
Yeah.
I mean, that actually fits. Everyone else had a nickname. I've told you all the nicknames and stuff. So I was Bones. Most of the people call me Andy because it's really weird. If you look at all the yearbooks and game programs when I played sports and stuff, it was always Andy. And then when I got to the Wilmington Star News, my first editor, sports editor, told me, he said, Andrew sounds like more literary. It sounds more mature. It sounds older, maybe. I think it'll go better as a byline. I said, but what about the baseball player?
That's fantastic.
And so I just started going by Andrew. And now it's really weird. People call me Andy. My brother calls me Andy.
Yeah. What did your dad call you?
Andrew.
Okay. That's what I figured.
My parents always call me Andrew.
I always found that interesting.
This is a James Brown podcast. So I know that somebody's already taped it. Come on, guys, get to it.
Yes. Shout out the guy in the comments. And there will be one that says you're taking too long to get into the
I didn't click on this to know what his name is.
Yeah, we apologize for that. But again, AJ, we make the rules over here, right? We talk about whatever we want for 30 minutes.
Well, we do the curveball. Generally, we do the veering off at the end. We did it to start this time unplanned. Mm-hmm. And now we know we're going to catch all kinds of hell for it. So let's dive into James Brown.
All right, man. Obviously, coming off a freshman season, I'm going to reference a lot of the stuff from Grant Hughes' fantastic piece, especially the one-on-one interview he did, where he talked about his kind of off-season development. More so, I'm going to focus on that and reference some of the stuff. I'll try to link it below. If I don't remember, then shame on me, but I should remember to do it this time. But looking at his freshman season, before we kind of look forward to what he might be able to do this year, averaged 1.2 points, 0.8 rebounds and 2.9 minutes per game, played in 16 games for the Tar Heels during his freshman year. But I think we've talked about it since the beginning that, again, James Brown, a guy that came in, David's talked about it as well, as more of a developmental guy. It was not a guy that we ever felt like was going to come in and play significant minutes as a freshman, and that didn't end up happening. And I think the jump in his sophomore year is something that's going to be very interesting to see. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I think the biggest thing from Grant's piece in particular, and something you just mentioned a few minutes ago, was the weight gain, the physical transformation. He arrived at UNC at 6'10", 215 pounds, now up to 240, 245. So, that's a 25, 30-pound gain in under a year. And he's, again, according to Grant's piece, the second heaviest player on the roster behind Yvonne. Let me preface this too. Luka, Henry, and Yvonne, that is what I'm calling them. I'm not going to attempt to just butcher their last names all season until I can get those down in my head. We're just going first names on those guys. So if you ever hear me say Henry,
it's also Bogavats.
Yeah, that's the problem. Every time we come on here, we learn a different.
I went out trick-or-treating and got lots of candy. Mm-hmm. It's Bogavats, like you have a T in there, like VAHTS. So we had that wrong too, because that's.
Well, again, I think
that's what brought the broadcasts over there were calling. So I went by what broadcasters were saying, but it's kind of interesting. Steve Kirshner's had to get a lot of clarification on name pronunciations here in the last couple months.
Yeah, and then understandably so. So I'm going to go first names on them until I can get it down.
I think most fans will too.
I think they'll understand where we're coming from with that. But again, I think the physical transformation is a positive, and I think it's intriguing too. But a guy that obviously the staff wanted to put on weight, and he has done that, deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think that will definitely help his game as he transitions into his sophomore year and in the next kind of step in his Carolina basketball career, because obviously he wants to have a more prominent role. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when you read that, AJ, I mean, I think it's a positive, and that's what you want to see in guys, right?
Food bill. That's what I thought.
It's not cheap, man. Not
either
cheap.
Ton of chicken, ton of steak, potatoes, and either broccoli or asparagus.
Asparagus, protein shakes.
And he said, well, it just depends on how the asparagus is looking that day. So I think it's fantastic because I actually believe that he exceeded expectations last year.
I could agree.
Because he had an impact sometimes. He's very active. I'm not sure that they make a push at Kansas without his last second play at the end of the first half. When he trailed Drake Powell in the transition, Drake missed a layup, and he was there to ram that thing home. And Jalen Withers told us after the game that it was James Brown, the energy from that sequence that he brought into the locker room, letting everybody have it, was what got that ship turned around right away. That was the signature moment of that game. Now, they lost the game and they had a lead and they missed some threes and that kind of thing, but he didn't think that they would have gotten back in without that. Like, they needed a spark. They were dying to find a spark. And here's James Brown, goggles and all, baby running like a baby deer up the floor, which is a joke, obviously. And he makes a play. And I think what we saw instant impacts at times from an energy standpoint, from an activity standpoint around the basket. His hands were better than I expected. He tried to putbacks, but the added strength, if you think about James Brown getting an offensive rebound and trying to go up and score with 7 minutes left in the first half, and the shots were heavily challenged a lot. He wasn't strong. He wasn't strong, not just up here, but it starts down here. He's added that weight. He's not just added weight, but it's strength.
Yeah, muscle.
If you read the article, Jonas Saracen is just as important as Doug Halverson. Jonas is strength and conditioning, a lot of the weight work, a lot of the stretching, the agilities, and all those important things. I expect him to be able to explode through some of that contact, explode through some of that resistance, and get off stuff around the rim and maybe be a decent trash bucket guy. Well, I don't know where the skills are as far as catching the ball in the post, turning and scoring. We got to see it. Hopefully we'll get the practice. Practice starts September 22nd. Hopefully around that time we'll have a chance to watch the team, and I'll look for something like that in him. Obviously, I'll look to see how much bigger he obviously is, and that would be pretty cool in and of itself. But I think it's finishing. I think it's having a stronger base when defending the low post. Because if he was better at defending the post a year ago, he would have played more, because they were terrible down there. They didn't really have any options.
No.
Lubin, Jalen Washington, who just never played with a great deal of strength. I thought Lubin did, but he wasn't tall. He had a good wingspan, but he played with his base so much and used it so much. I think it diminished a lot of his wingspan.
He was a late bloomer last year a little bit too. He came on this season and kind of.
I think a lot of that is just it took a while for Hubert to just kind of figure out the right mix is really what it was. I think Lubin had some good games earlier. He had some really good games the second half of the season at Vanderbilt 2 years ago. But anyway, I think what Brown does is he gives them a guy who could potentially spell Vessar. And that's what's important, because I think one of the biggest question marks of this team is when Henry goes to the bench, who's at the 5 spot? Theoretically, you would want it to be James Brown, Zayden High. So one of those two guys. And I do think that's a battle that is going on and will continue to go on. Which one of them goes in first? Because I think that's the direction Hubert will go. Because one of the options, and this has been discussed, and I've talked to some people around the program, is could you move Caleb Wilson to the 5? I mean, he's not going there to play the 5. And the 5 isn't going to be where he plays at the next level. And you want to showcase a great talent like that, because let's face it, Carolina could use a hot shot freshman who is big time, who's first team all ACC kind of stuff. I'm not sure Caleb Wilson is that guy playing extended minutes at the 5 out of necessity. You want James Brown or Zayden High to take a lot of those minutes. I'm leaning toward James Brown because of the strength, because I think he's got better ball skills around the basket, better hands. And I know we haven't seen Zayden High in a year and a half, but when we last saw him, he was a bit of a live wire. Energy guy, he's got some strength, but he's a live wire. You don't really know he's going to commit 2 fouls in 20 seconds. He's going to take an open 3 from the corner, and the ball's going to sail over the basket like a plane taken off from LaGuardia. I mean, he's had some really ugly shots. He's had a lot of time to work on that stuff. And I don't want to go into his stuff. We'll do that later at some other time. We'll get into some of the storylines around him. But James is the one guy that when you look at last year, you think, wow, if he could just get stronger, if he could develop a little bit more in the post and get more confidence, he's someone that could give them 5, 7, 8 minutes a game where, yeah, there's a drop-off, but it's not a massive drop-off. And if Henry gets in foul trouble, can he give you 12 to 15? Instead of having to move Wilson there and taking away what Wilson does best at the 4. So I think James Brown is an incredibly important player in this team because if he's trusted enough, his entry into a game will allow everything else to stay the same. If they have to start moving stuff around to make up for Henry not being on the floor, that's where the team, I think, hurts itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think his development's intriguing because, I mean, every player in the country is working on their body in the offseason. Every player on the country is working on their game in the offseason. It's not like he's the only person doing this kind of stuff. It's what you want to hear, and it's what you want to see, and it's what you expect from guys that are making, as much money as these guys are playing at the University of North Carolina. They are essentially pros now, and it seems like James Brown is approaching it from that kind of professional standpoint of like, hey, this is sure I've got to get my degree and I need to focus on academics too, but this is kind of my job and I'm paid very well to do this.
He's making good coin, Jacob. He's making a lot more than you and I are.
Exactly. So a guy that's working on his body and trying to get stronger and improve aspects of his game, that isn't like, oh my God, look what he's doing. It's like, no, that's what I expect from everybody on the roster. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that is the kind of bare minimum when it comes to these guys, but it is a positive. I think the question is, and I think the strength's going to help. There's no doubt about it. A couple of the other things that you talk about in the interview was working on his mid-range and 3-point shot to expand his offensive game some. I don't personally envision James Brown coming in next year and just hitting threes all of a sudden. I don't know if that's a part of his game yet. I do like that he's working on those things. But that's not, when I look at James Brown and hear that, I'm not like, well, yeah, he's just going to be a 3-point threat next season. I don't really see that happening. But the fact that he, again, is trying to build on his game and expand it is, again, what you want to hear from anybody on the Carolina roster, much less a guy like James Brown, who I think the potential is there for him to have a lot bigger role on the team this year. My question is, what does that role look like? That I don't know. I'm not sure about. I think that could go a couple different ways.
Yeah, I think that work that you just alluded to goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. They don't want to have to dramatically change. I think that they're very interchangeable, 1, 2, and 3. Very interchangeable.
Yes.
And really, you could add the 4 to that. So they're very interchangeable. However, at the 5, not so much. So I think that they can roll a lot of combinations out 1 through 4 and be the same team. There won't be any shift from, we have to go from running the ball every time to throwing the ball every time because this quarterback's different than that quarterback. That's what they want. That's what they're trying to avoid. That's why he's working on a lot of those things because Henry Vesar is going to do a lot of damage away from the basket. The potential for 2-man game between Vesar and Caleb Wilson or even Jaron Stevenson when he's at the 4, I think both of them could be outstanding baseline players. That's something we haven't seen from Carolina in a while. And it's there because Vesar can hit the 3. He could pass. I had somebody in the program say that they think that Vesar could lead the team in assists this year. After seeing some of the work that they're doing, after seeing the way they're going to move the ball, which is why when we did the Kyan Evans thing, I said, look, people are saying he's not a typical Carolina point guard. I'm not so sure that that's the point this year. I'm not so sure that even matters with the intent because someone's going to bring it up. But then when they get rid of it, they're just in a flow with certain kinds of shots. And they have a lot of guys that are capable of putting the ball on the floor, making a defender move, and they're pulling up and shooting or finding something. I think they have a lot of that. That's what they believe they have. So I think with James Brown, if he comes in the game and suddenly you can't run a lot of that stuff because it's not in his skill set, then that changes everybody else. So you want to be able to shift to somebody like him. Someone's going to have to back up the 5 and not change much. So, of course, he's going to work on those things. He's going to work on them anyway because the way the game has changed. But I think that there is an urgency there for him to get comfortable enough, pick and pop, and also pick and pass. That's people focus a lot on the pick and pop. I think the pick and pass can be just as dangerous with this team because of SR's ability, but also more length, a lot of versatility with the length. And I'm just really, really anticipating having an infatuation with the baseline game that Caleb Wilson and Jaron Stevenson can bring, especially when Vessar pulls a defender out. So if James Brown could pull that defender out, it allows for a lot more of that stuff to happen. That's why he's working on these things. I think first and foremost, needs to be better at what he showed signs of last year. He needs to be able to defend in the block, grab some rebounds, be strong getting boards, and finish around the basket. Those are the three things he must do better. And if he's not doing it better, it's going to be Zayden High who steps on the court, not James Brown. And High already has a comfort well away from the basket. High's issues are more skills and finesse and efficiency around the basket. I think James Brown has an edge on him there. So if you want to run the whole thing and be able to be who you are, they need him to be more comfortable away. So that makes sense. Are we going to see him shooting threes? We heard from Hubert for 3 years Armando was going to shoot threes, and he finally did. But he didn't there for a long time. So are we going to see it from James Brown? I have no idea, but I understand why that's a point of emphasis for him right now.
Yeah, and I think it's unrealistic to expect a guy who's like, yeah, I've been working on my three-point game a lot this year and like trying to step out more to just be, the new season comes around and he's just hitting threes and, an outside threat. I think that's a bit unrealistic, especially a guy that is still very early in his developmental stage, in my opinion. I mean, again, David Siss talked about it when Carolina first recruited him and landed him. It was like, hey, this guy is not a one and done stud who's going to come in, or maybe not even a one and done, a guy that's just going to be ready made when he gets to college. This is a project player that's going to need some time to develop. So I do think that's a bit unrealistic to expect that from James Brown. But I think all this is great. And I think the mindset that he's bringing to the season, the want to get better is what you want to see. Again, I'm not sitting here going to pat him on the back for getting stronger and improving his game. That's what's expected with these guys. But it is.
He did a lot, though. But he did a lot.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's fine. But again, I'm not going to sit here and just be like, he's the only guy in the country that's doing that. Everybody should be doing that, and there are a lot of players that are doing that. But it is a positive sign that he seems so focused on, hey, I need to gain weight. The staff's telling me to get stronger. I'm going to work as hard as I can to get stronger. The staff's telling me that I need to improve my game. I need to be able to step outside a little bit more. I'm really going to focus on that in the offseason and try to improve it. So all this is really positive, but I think, in my opinion at least, and I'll see if you agree with this, very difficult to project what kind of production James Brown might bring to the court next season, because I also think there's an opportunity there, as you've kind of alluded to. You look at the 5 position, you've got Vessar, which is great. I expect him to be the starting 5 there, but you've also got guys like Zayden High who've been out a year, haven't played competitive basketball essentially in over a year.
Didn't practice with the team last year.
Exactly. That's not necessarily what his role is, remains to be seen as well. And you've got James Brown, and you've got Yvonne, who they brought in from High Point, who barely played there. So I think at that 5 position in particular, you're kind of looking at that and saying, man, like, there is definitely an opportunity there for a guy like James Brown to carve out some kind of role, whether that's playing 5 minutes a game, whether that's playing 12 minutes a game. I don't know, but the opportunity is certainly there for a guy like him to step in and potentially be that backup 5, like you alluded to, that can take some minutes away from a guy like Henry, who doesn't have to worry about, again, playing 35, 36 minutes a game. If he could just be that, if he can be a guy that can provide some positive production for 5 to 10 minutes a game to just give Henry a little bit of a break, I think you're looking at that if you're Hubert and saying, give me that all day long. That's really the role that I need you to fill right now. I don't need you to be some starter. I don't need you to come in and average 15 points a game. If you could do that, that'd be fantastic. But the role is there and the opportunity is there for James Brown to take. I think the question mark is, does he take it? And I think that's what I'll be looking for as the season comes around.
Yeah, and to clarify about the perimeter shooting stuff, the three-point shooting, they're not going to run a play for him to shoot a three.
No.
I think what you have to envision to allow the team to flow the way it needs to flow is, imagine in your head for a minute that James Brown goes out and sets a screen for Kyan Evans, okay? A high ball screen. Kyan either dribbles away from the screen or gets rid of the ball, whatever the case is. Let's say he dribbles away, flips it back to James Brown, and there's James Brown at the top of the key. And time freezes for a moment. You've got Evans's guy doesn't guard the ball, he stays on Evans because Evans is really, really good at shooting off screens and stuff. Everyone else is guarded, and James Brown's guy sagging in the lane. Mm-hmm. So they're going to take away the alley-oop. Perhaps they're going to cloud the path for some kind of baseline cut and a pass, and they're telling James Brown, do something with the ball. So now unfreeze time. He has to make a decision. If he hits just a couple threes, they're going to have to go out and honor him. And if you force the defense to respect the guys on the floor offensively, then you find yourself you create a lot of advantageous situations. So if they have to come out and at least respect him enough and he could pull that sagging defender out because he hits a couple of threes, that changes things for Carolina. That's all they need. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be Luke May when Luke was a 5 for a while and then was popping out and hitting threes. He's not going to be that. He's not going to be Walker. I shouldn't say Walker Kessler. People hate him now. But you know what, Walker, the kind of player Walker, the Florida State game, he's not going to be Walker Kessler in the Florida State game. It's not going to be any of that stuff. But if it has to be honored and respected, that is a win for Carolina because that allows, when you pull him off the bench and put him into the game for Henry, that allows Carolina to still be what Hubert envisions Carolina being at its best.
Yeah, and he deserves credit for sticking around. I mean, in this world, in college basketball, you see guys come in as freshmen, don't play much, don't have a prominent role, and they go somewhere else so they can make more money or play and, get a better role. I don't think anybody would have blamed James Brown if it was like, look, man, I'm going to go somewhere else so I can play a little bit more and develop a little bit more. But no, his focus this offseason was development over transferring, and I think he deserves credit for that too, especially in this world of college basketball that we live in. So
he knew that coming in. So he understood this was part of the process, and he's not in a hurry. But also, I'm telling you, he's making more money at Carolina now than he would anywhere else.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the selling points of Carolina. I think that's the greater commitment to not just football, but basketball. As I said last winter, they're going all in on football. They're going to do the same thing with basketball, and they have backed that up every step along the way since I reported that. With a guy like James Brown, the minimum that Carolina scholarship dudes are getting is an impressive amount. And I think that's part of the pitch moving forward that, look, everyone's taken care of. Mm-hmm. Everyone's taken care of. And it gives him a chance to say, you know what, I'm just going to lay my anchor here for a while. I'm doing well. I'm going to a great school. I've got good coaches here. I like where I am. I'm going to have patience and learn my game. Mm-hmm. And honestly, by the time he would be hitting his senior year or near finishing, there's going to be a fifth year. There's going to be a fifth year. You got that Vanderbilt lawsuit going on right now. I thought the NCAA may have approved it this past spring. I think they'll approve it next spring. There will be a fifth year added. And a guy like him has 4 more if he wants to there. And he'll make really good money, get a great education, play for a blue blood, be forever loved, and his game will grow. And maybe he ends up making pretty good coin playing 10, 12 years overseas. Yeah. But as far as this year goes, if he can make the defenses respect and honor him, that is a success from the perimeter stuff, and defend with your body, move a guy off the block, putbacks, rebounds, maybe a little rim protection. And that's all Carolina could ask for. If he provides that, that is a massive, massive piece to what this team needs.
Yeah. There's an opportunity there, man. It's up for him to take it, and we'll kind of see what happens as we get a little bit closer and obviously get into the season. So I think it's a good place to wrap this one up. Get involved in the comments. What is your opinions on James Brown? What do you guys think? Do you think he's a guy that can kind of carve out a role this year? What did you think about the interview Grant Hughes did? Again, I'm gonna link it below so you guys can go check that one out on our website, tarhill247.com. Just get involved in the comments and let us know what you think about James Brown, especially this upcoming season. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of our UNC basketball look ahead series. Again, like AJ alluded to earlier this week, Jaden Young coming up next, the Virginia Tech transfer, in-state guy coming back to his home state to play for the Tar Heels. I'll be looking a little bit more at him and kind of what role he might be able to carve out for the Tar Heels this year as well. So make sure you like, make sure you share, hit that notification bell, and as always, we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.
Thanks.